Hello and welcome to ArtShow. I'm Craig Stover, and today I have with me Suzanne Schireson. Hey, Suzanne, how are you?
Thank you for having me.
A pleasure to have you on the show. So, I wanted to start out by sharing some work of yours, things that I found of interest, a couple of pieces. So, I wanted to start with this one. This is a smaller piece, although I think a lot of your works are on the smaller side, at least the pieces I've seen. But I thought this
Yeah.
was a really dynamic picture. Um, am I right in assuming that a lot of your work focuses on like family members, people that you know?
This particular series, absolutely, I would say my work in general focuses on family and then people that I know. This particular series is inspired by different mothers that I was talking with during COVID. And so during COVID, my work shrunk down to about 22 by 30, out of necessity, right? But this particular painting was inspired by a good friend of mine named Sarah Goke, who she bought a VW van during COVID just to get out of here.
Uh,
And so this was, sort of she wanted to be able to visit her family across the country and also have a way to move around with her kids. And I pirated this van in my mind, and sort of was imagining just taking it and using it as a studio, like as a private studio for making art. And so that was that was where this came from. So it's just the combination of, I think, the inspiration of the color, like from this vintage van that she bought, kind of grew out into the landscape and kind of took over. So yeah, so this particular series of work is about creating time and space for the necessity of like your own creative practice outside of work or care responsibilities, really.
I'm sorry, I realized I think I messed up your name to begin with when I first
Oh,
introduced
it's
you.
fine.
Schireson.
It's Shearson. It's
Schireson.
fine.
Sorry
Yes.
about that. I
Yes.
appreciate
No,
it.
it's absolutely fine.
So one of the reasons I was fascinated by this picture, this is oil on paper.
Right.
So do you prepare your papers?
No, I buy Arches oil
Okay.
paper, and it's
Okay.
pre-primed. They don't tell you what it's
All
even
right.
primed with, but it's archival. And so I can work directly on it. And I think for, 20 years, I was trying to find a way for painting to feel more like drawing. And so working on the direct surface of the paper, really, just that kind of porous surface is really wonderful. So
Did you that now like working on paper more than say canvas or wood?
totally. I mean, I think I'll always like oil primed linen is a pretty special thing. I do still enjoy that quite a bit, but these paintings are all on paper. And I think also for me, the flexibility with that too, that I can have a lot of paintings going at once, or let's say I could ship 30 paintings, in a single box.
Right, yeah.
Like just
Mother of
the
invention.
versatility of it really, that was really exciting to me. And I think the paintings, when I switched to working on paper like this, they became more like short stories rather
Hmm.
than like epic novels, like a, 6 month like oil on canvas big painting would be. So yeah, so these are all inspired by other artists that I know.
Hmm.
And this particular painting was actually inspired by a student of mine, Shabnam Janasari. Shabnam was like rolling up her canvases to move across the country, and just the way that plane is created by like a canvas and stretched canvas on the ground. I just found that very poetic. I
Yeah.
think painting it's like a portal. It's a portal to another place. And so just sort of to like build a world around that figure and kind of have this like luminous opening in the ground coming up from that shape was seemed like an interesting combination.
I notice on quite a number of your works, it looks like you lay down, a full color first, and then you're sort of working up. And I also notice that you do to really make some of these colors pop, you do a lot of colors on black, right? So
Yeah.
at least that first one. So
Yeah.
my real question is looking at your work, a number of them, I noticed you use this very specific purple, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of curious, is there a meaning behind the use of that purple, or is it that you've just fell in love with this color that you found?
Yeah, I think that I love that color, right? It's mainly it's a couple different. I play with a couple different purples, but in particular, there's something called luminous violet that
Okay.
that Holbein makes that I really like. But by starting with a fluorescent ground, the light is sort of like inherent through the whole painting, and
Yeah. Makes
it's
it electric.
it's electric. And I think, I went to the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts, where we would often start a painting with burnt sienna
Mhm.
as the ground. And I think I really wanted to like get away from that
Yeah.
as much as possible. And just to sort of test it. And so I find for myself, if I start the ground with this color that kind of is different to me, then it allows me to see other colors in a different way. So gray looks really different next to that fluorescent color. It leans
Yeah.
toward green, has different presence.
I know this is switching away from the color, but I really wanted to show this piece because of the drawing. What I like about your work is the color palette is nice, but you have a really wonderful touch in terms of mark
Thanks.
making. So I liked this also because not only because of all the reworking and the fact that you're using an eraser as a drawing instrument, but the fact that there's still that really strong storyline. This picture really it leaves me with a lot of questions. Who is
Yeah.
this? What's this barber doing? What's going on here?
Yeah, totally. Oh, I have a lot of answers if you'd
Okay,
like.
pour them
Um,
on.
this is a film. This is a film still. So I made a charcoal animation. So this drawing does not exist in real life. I mean, this drawing has been
Okay.
obliterated. Process of stop motion animation. So you can look up the film. I do have this video posted. We could post it in the show notes if you want, but it's about a minute and a half. This is Fanny Brice, who was a famous Jewish comedian.
Hmm.
And my great-grandfather was an early plastic surgeon. And so Fanny Brice was like one of his first kind of famous clients. And he has a really checkered story, like checkered past.
Yeah.
Really, like, he had his office was on Delancey Street in Philadelphia. But anyway, he was Jewish as well, and learned plastic surgery from a German doctor who was they were trying to hide people's identity to make them safe from Nazis. But then, my grandfather was taking that and helping people to change their identity for cosmetic reasons and social reasons. And so just the complexity of all that is so big.
Hmm.
He wrote a book called As Others See You. And so I was reading his book and making these drawings and just trying to wrap my head around the whole thing, and sort of understand this idea of erasure. So erasure was like a really important part of the concept behind the story in terms of erasing one's identity or shifting one's identity.
It was nice to see on your site that you had a section just of drawings, because I think
Mm.
that helped me. It informed, it informed me about some of the paintings that you do. So
Mhm.
I could see that you were bringing drawing into painting, although for me it's all the same thing. Um,
Yeah,
but I also,
absolutely.
the idea we talked about mark making earlier, and that's why I chose this particular one, because you've got such a plethora of different marks within this. But then is that a little bit of a collage that I'm seeing?
Yeah. I love that you said that, you think drawing and painting are the same thing, because absolutely.
I think
Absolutely.
painting is actually just drawing with paint. I mean, that's my approach.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And texture is color. Like texture and color like have the same, I think have really similar functions.
Hmm.
But yeah, I was creating these structures or sort of studios for mothers or caretakers. That was the idea behind this series of work. And this was like an ice fishing shack. I just kept
Hmm.
seeing small structures built out of necessity, and I loved those and was like playing with them. But the collage is actually my daughter's you know, my daughter's dress from when she was like a year old. I just Xeroxed it and
Awesome.
like working with like those black and white patterns a bit.
Do you
So
still own this one?
I do.
Okay, because whoever ends up owning this needs to hear this story because I
I am
think that
so
really
true.
is.
So true. No, you
Yeah.
reminded me of it. It's nice to see it.
And
See
I
it.
wanted to show this. I just thought this was so. This was for an exhibit at, was this Tiger Strike?
Yeah, Tiger Strikes Asteroid,
Yeah.
which is out of Charlottesville. But this particular show was in North Carolina, in Asheville, North Carolina.
Hmm.
And so during COVID, these gallery boxes were
Hmm.
built, installed through the city of Asheville, North Carolina.
They were
And
here too. They popped
oh,
up
did
in
they?
Philly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I
Uh,
wanted to end on this particular painting because I thought this was a winner because it also, there's that color laid down to begin with, but instead of darkers, you're using, bright yellows, which is just such a, I love yellows. I think it's fantastic, which is funny because my wife hates yellows. But the addition of that blue gray in the top and then the motion, there's you still have that storyline within these, which I really like. Is this you?
Yes, I mean, I insert myself a lot. So, like, I'm talking to people about these stories or about different ways that they make creative work. But I'm very often kind of using myself as a model. I just need to see a body, and so
Hmm.
it's like I'm an actor, like sort of inserting myself.
Are
This
you using
particular,
are you using photographs as source materials or just from life?
I have big mirrors in my studio, which help me
Okay.
a lot. But this particular one, I remember I took a video of myself like repeating this movement,
Hmm.
um, and then took a film still from that video because there's just like no way to capture that particular
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah, I can see where you pick. My last note on this is I love the geometry, right? The secret geometry that's within this. There's such a nice balance within it. I would love to plot everything out, but that's the
Thank
ADHD
you.
in me.
No, I
So
appreciate it.
I want to start our other part of our conversation about your early childhood, essentially, because I love asking this question. Do you have, as a young kid, any like a first memory of an exposure to art that you still think about?
Yeah. I don't know if it's still up, but there's this Chagall mural at the Philadelphia Museum of Art. Is it still up? The Chagall mural?
No,
No.
no, the curtain, the giant
Yes.
one. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
No, it's
Um,
got moved,
but
but that was
I but
it.
I remember that like, that painting was like the sun, like the luminosity of that thing. And I definitely, I mean, that had a big influence. My mom did watercolor at different points, and I remember a watercolor of hers like over the fireplace that was semi-abstract, like you'd have to like find the garden in it. And I think that was really I don't know, I mean that's like ingrained in my brain for
I
sure.
love asking that question because it is so informative. I mean, as soon as you said the Chagall, that's your palette, right? That huge saturation, that intensity. I love that.
Yeah,
So
I got
so
it. And I don't look at it that much now. Like I got to look back at that. Yeah,
uh,
yeah. Look
oh
at it
yeah,
more.
it's there, and even the storyline within
Mhm.
it. I see, there's a reference there. So speed me up a little bit. At what point did you decide that art was for you? At what point did you decide you were going to become an artist?
Um, I painted a lot in high school. And I remember like having this thought in high school that I would study art history. My mom studied art history, that I'd study art history and I'd become a professor because that way I could like have what I loved, be around what I
Hmm.
loved, have like a comfortable, like have a job, right? Um, and so I don't know. Then I went to the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts and did that dual degree program with Penn. And all along, I just kept thinking like, okay, maybe I'll work in like arts administration, like I'll work in some other mode to be like an art support, to support the arts in some way. But yeah, then it just kept going,
Slid
it
right
just
into it.
just kept going. Yeah, I
Yeah.
just kept learning more and more, and eventually went to graduate school at Indiana University in Bloomington, Indiana.
Okay.
And that's really where I started teaching at the college level, because I was like a TA, had like a scholarship where I would teach undergrads, and just felt like that was a really good fit for me, because I love being alone in my studio, but it's great to be around people sometimes too.
Yeah.
So
Right.
a balance of those two things. And so from there, I just started applying for teaching jobs. And so currently I teach full time at the University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth, and that's I live in Providence, Rhode Island.
So it all just snowballed into
Yeah.
what you got. One of the things I want to make sure to cover in our brief conversation today is, I like talking to artists about their process or what they think about their process. But before that, the question I have to ask you is, I want to talk about color. So we talked about it briefly. When you think about color, what does color mean to you?
Color color departs from reality for me. Like color is a way for me to get the painting. It's like reality adjacent. Like I definitely work a lot from direct observation, but I'm very interested in like the poetry of the image, or giving more than what's like currently around us. But also I think with color, like I just really love how one color can look completely different in two different paintings, like same color on the palette, two different paintings, totally different stories. So it's always fresh, like it's always different. And that's where the color relativity comes in. I mean, the way that color affects it just drives the painting for me. I mean, the drawing really drives the painting too, but I think that the color just is constantly posing these questions for me.
Does
And
color
it's
surprise you?
yeah, I love that. Like I'm trying to figure it out in this painting behind me. Like, what is the key? What is
Right.
that key? Like, how am I going to get that color to? Because it's you can animate it, and
Yeah.
like if you hit the right note, you animate the painning.
Yeah.
And
It
you know,
turns it on, essentially. Yeah.
totally. And
So,
sometimes I get it really quickly, and sometimes it takes forever.
oh, I
But
hate the ones that are quick. That to me, that's I need
can't
that
trust.
challenge.
You
Yeah.
can't trust them. Yeah, you can't
No.
trust them. Quick, I
So
think.
you're in your studio, you're gonna make something new. What inspires you to create?
I'm reading this book about Barbara Hepworth right now, who's like a modernist sculptor. And I know Barbara Hepworth's work, but I never knew she had triplets. She had triplets. And I have two
Good
kids. I can
fact.
barely with that. But
Right.
just think, looking at her work sort of through that lens, and then finding in her biography um, different quotes about how motherhood affected her practice, or sort of gave her a different idea about creation.
Mm-hmm.
That's like that stuff's really driving my work right now. I'm very interested in those, pulling those pieces together and finding shape and color and mark that can kind of in my own way like communicate with that or retell
Mm-hmm.
that story.
Is it the
There's
other artist's artwork or is it the other artist's stories?
It's a story.
Yeah.
It's a story, and it does also come from photographs of their studio space and sort of seeing how they piece things I love seeing how people piece things together. So it's
Yeah.
reading about how they pieced it together, but also visually kind of like seeing that. So I've just been doing a lot of research into artist studios and some writing. And there's a wonderful book I just got by Catherine Ricketts, who's a Philadelphia based our author. And it's called The Mother Artist. And so
Mm.
there's a lot, I do feel like there's a lot of there are a lot of people who are asking those questions right now too, and kind of looking back through art history at where the role that motherhood played. Because a lot of times there's this idea that you kind of can't be like a mother and an artist, that they're in
Yeah.
some kind of schism to each other.
Right.
I think we don't believe that anymore, but
No.
I think in some ways it sort of, I mean, it's yeah, motherhood showed me a lot of other things and ways of looking that I
Yeah.
could back into my work. It changed my work for sure. I mean, your life, whatever
Yeah.
your life is.
Oh yeah. I've always felt that, half my artistic career was just trying to drop the baggage that everybody gave me when I was young. And that was just total baloney, like didn't have to do with anything, just things that people thought were true. And
It's so true. Yeah.
I want to ask you about because we discussed, sort of your process a little bit, but one of the things that I love to learn about is your audience. When you're making a work, are you thinking of your audience at all and what you're trying to tell them, or is the storyline really for you and the audience just naturally happens?
It's a great question. I think it was always just about trying to, I loved artists that were trying to tell their story, and then I could take certain things from that. And so I think that's how I began. But I do feel like increasingly, especially with social media, like there are so many other artists who are also making artwork about experiences of motherhood, or not just like, I'm not talking about like, painting a baby, but like conceptually,
Hmm.
how motherhood or caretaking affects the work, or breathes ideas into the work. And so I do feel like I'm in dialogue kind of with quite a few of those artists. So even though I'm not explicitly making work for them, I really like the fact that I don't feel like I'm in a vacuum
Yeah.
as much as maybe I have in previous years. So it does feel good to kind of be a bit, feel that sense of dialogue. And so I have, virtual studio visits with people, or real life sometimes too, but, people are across the country. And it's nice to kind of come together and talk about some of those concepts.
When you're making your work, obviously you are having a dialogue with your audiences, and there's different mediums I find have sort of different dialogues, or different ways of communicating that people can accept or not. Have you ever experimented with other materials, in terms of, say, sculpture or printmaking or dance, poetry, theater, anything like that?
Um, well, the animation was like a really, I
Okay.
mean, yes, it's drawing, but the time-based media was really interesting. And it was kind of, I've been thinking a lot about that. It was great to be such a novice with that. Like the animation is rickety. It's really like not slick
Right,
at all.
right.
And I love that about it. And I think, at this point, like painting for like, 25 years, there's a certain element to that level of craft that sometimes to be a novice in something else, I think is really important to I don't know, just to like see it all differently again, or refresh your view. But in more recent shows, I've been trying to build these like installation spaces within the gallery where I bring in like a space for families, essentially, so that people can view the show with kids if they
Hmm.
want to, or that they have a place to sort of sit and reflect, much in the way that the images that I'm creating are hoping to like promote. So that's really an interesting, feels like part like stage set and part sculpture.
Yeah, that's fascinating. You've mentioned time-based. I'm curious because I've interviewed a number of artists lately who are now painters who are now working with VR. Have you ever done anything like that, or do you want to?
No, I was in a faculty meeting yesterday, and the art historians were talking about how they were encouraging students to use the VR headset to like visit different locations around the
Hmm.
world, architecturally. And there's a lot of VR that's happening where I work at UMass Dartmouth. And so I'm curious. I would love to dip my toe in.
I'd love to see a world of yours around me,
Exciting.
right? To
No,
be
thank
in
you.
the
That's
picture.
encouraging. That is
That would,
very.
yeah. So get on
I gotta write a grant for that. That's a
there
good,
you
yeah,
go.
good idea. Good idea.
Do you regularly go to, you mentioned studio visits or virtual, but do you make it a practice to go to other art shows when you can, physical art shows?
Absolutely. It's great. I mean, I'm in Providence, Rhode Island, so the city has a lot of artists with RISD so close by, but Boston too. But I wrote a grant for this summer to expand the work that I'm doing, and also make specific studio visits to mother artists that I know, and sort of sit with them, talk with them in their space, to get some more, to kind of expand this.
I see a whole book coming out of that.
Yeah, I would love, so I'm looking forward this summer. I'm kind of making a list, and I'm definitely going to do some visits. And certainly, I mean, I have people come and visit my studio too, but for me right now, I kind of want to do more research in other people's studios.
Are you often in your studio? Like how often?
I'm in here a couple days a week. I mean, I teach 2 days a week. I have a lot of administrative responsibility because I'm the graduate program director at UMass. But I certainly get in here a few days a week, and then in the summer I have these big chunks. So the semester just ended, and I'm like in heaven here.
Okay.
So
So it
and
sounds
then
like so you have seasonal practices.
I definitely have seasonal, like the winter break is a huge, that's probably the most productive one, honestly, because summer so much is happening. But it's enough to like the touchstone of like, I gotta get in here a couple days a week to really maintain that consistency.
Hmm.
And it's definitely a balance. I mean, it's all a balance. It's all a crazy balance. But I don't think I've ever talked to any painter who thinks they have enough time. So it's
So you're
okay.
you're in your studio, you're gonna make something new. Do you have certain studio rituals that you need to do in order to get running?
I've got to have everything here. I pack all my food and my tea and like
Okay.
everything. Like I'm not, when I enter this room, I'm not going to leave this room.
Okay. So
Like,
you're prepped. You got your lunch, you've got your
yeah, every
music.
moment, every moment is precious. I love my music, definitely. Sometimes I listen to audiobooks. I love
Mhm.
listening to podcasts, but they're
Yep.
like different projects. I can't always do that. It's a specific kind of work that
Depends
I
on the
can.
on the piece of your brain that you need to paint.
Definitely does. It definitely
Oh,
does.
perfect.
Yep. Yep.
So we've got time for just one more question. Question I ask all artists. What does making art do for you?
It helps me reflect. It helps me reflect on my world. Like it helps me find, I think, gratitude and like to sort of understand. It helps me to understand my world. It helps me to be a better teacher for sure. And I think more than I say about these little spaces that I paint, like they're not about escape, right? That one of the VW bus, like it looks like it's like an escape, but it's not. It's about like a place to like reflect and refuel. And that's totally how I feel about my studio and my
Well,
work.
that's
Yeah.
that's how that picture looks because the person is not in driving away. They're there. They've sat. They're grounded. Their feet are on the ground. That
Yes.
makes sense to
Yeah.
me.
Good. Good. Love to
So,
hear that.
so yeah, check that box. Well, Suzanne, I can't thank you enough for coming by and talking with me today.
Thank
It was a
you.
pleasure learning more about your work. Now I want to dive in and find some older work to really see, that
Thank you.
progression of your stuff. I also want to thank everybody who tuned in to Art Show today. We really appreciate your support. Of course, we love it when you like and subscribe. That really helps push Art Show forward. And if you have any questions for us, feel free to leave them in the comments section. If we can't answer them, we'll push them along. So again, thank you for watching today. And again, thank you so much for entertaining me today with your
Oh, my
answers.
pleasure.
Take care, everyone.